Welcome to Bittensor Weekly, your source of truth for everything happening in the Bittensor ecosystem. I'm your host, and this is episode 2, Saturday, March 14th, 2026. This week, the Bittensor network just completed the largest decentralized large language model pre-training run in history. Covenant-72B, 72 billion parameters, over a trillion tokens, trained permissionlessly on Subnet 3. Bittensor co-founder Jacob Steves, also known as Const, called it a once-in-a-generation moment, and the numbers back him up. The post polled 1.2 million impressions. Meanwhile, Grayscale's Bittensor Trust just filed an S1 to convert into an ETF. Chutes AI partnered with a Harvard professor on prefix caching research, and Jason Calacanis told his audience to buy dTAO on This Week in Startups. Let's get into it. dTAO is trading at roughly $209 as of Thursday, March 12th, up about 6% over the past 24 hours. Market cap sits at $2.26 billion. 24-hour trading volume came in at $191 million. The network has 10.76 million dTAO in circulating supply out of the 21 million hard cap, with 7.31 million dTAO staked. That's a 67.95% staking rate. Of that staked dTAO, 72.5% sits in root and 27.5% is staked in subnets. That alpha stake ratio continues to climb. Mark Jeffrey from Stillcore Capital noted this week that subnet staking has crossed the 20% threshold, adding that going from 0 to 20% was harder than it will be to go from 20% to 70%. All 128 subnet slots remain full, with 56 actively producing. The sum of all alpha token prices has been steadily rising since the December bottom, according to data charted by Dreadbongo, a Bittensor community educator, a signal that capital is rotating into subnets rather than just sitting in root.
Number 1. Covenant-72B, the largest decentralized LLM ever trained. This is the story of the week, and arguably the biggest milestone in Bittensor's history. The Open Tensor Foundation announced that Subnet 3, known as Templar, has completed training Covenant-72B, a 72 billion parameter large language model trained on over 1 trillion tokens. This was done entirely permissionlessly on the Bittensor network. No central coordinator, no data center, just miners competing to contribute to a training run that, by scale, rivals what well-funded labs produce. Const called it one of the largest and likely the largest decentralized AI training run ever conducted. His post pulled 1.24 million impressions and 783 retweets. Sami Kassab from Unsupervised Capital amplified it, saying, "Decentralized compute networks are about to go on a generational run." Mark Jeffrey shared it to his audience. Joseph Jacks at OSS Capital called it out. Rob Greer at Stillcore Capital and the Yuma team both highlighted it. This wasn't just a subnet update. It was the ecosystem's proof of concept moment for decentralized pre-training at scale. Why does this matter? Because the prevailing narrative has been that decentralized networks can do inference and fine-tuning, but that pre-training, the expensive, coordination-heavy part, is something only centralized labs with billions in funding can pull off. Covenant-72B challenges that assumption directly. Templar, Subnet 3, is now the 5th largest subnet by market cap at $39 million and was the top performer among large subnets this week, up 16.6% over 7 days. Number 2. Grayscale Bittensor Trust Update. Grayscale's GTAO Trust had a significant week. The holding period for accredited investors was reduced from 12 months to 6, and the trust became an SEC reporting company. Most notably, an S1 filing was submitted for potential conversion into a full ETF. GTAO currently trades at approximately 2x its net asset value. That premium tells you something about institutional demand for dTAO exposure through traditional finance rails. This is the same pathway Grayscale used to convert its Bitcoin and Ethereum trusts into ETFs.
Number 3. Chutes AI x Harvard. Chutes AI on Subnet 64 announced a research collaboration with Harvard professor Juncheng Yang on prefix caching algorithms. Chutes continues to build out its infrastructure at an impressive pace. They're now routing across 20 models, have trusted execution environments live across 15+ models, and are processing at 300 billion tokens per week. The post announcing the Harvard collaboration pulled 40,000 impressions. There was also a notable dust-up this week. Const publicly called out OpenRouter for excluding Chutes from their platform, citing data concerns, while Chutes uses TEE encryption for all inference. The post generated significant engagement and highlighted the competitive dynamics between decentralized and centralized inference providers. Number 4. Jason Calacanis endorses dTAO. On This Week in Startups, Jason Calacanis said, and I'm quoting, "I don't give financial advice, but if anybody is listening, buy a little dTAO." That episode also featured Bittensor co-founder Ala Shabana, also known as ShibShib, alongside Mark Jeffrey. Getting dTAO mentioned on one of the largest startup podcasts in the world is meaningful distribution. Number 5. Proof of Talk Paris. Bittensor will have a dedicated track at Proof of Talk in Paris, June 2nd and 3rd, 2026, held at the Louvre. Both co-founders, Const and ShibShib, are featured. This is Bittensor's first major presence at a premier European crypto event. Here are some other notable developments from the week. Zeus on Subnet 18 announced a pilot with a European energy trading firm starting April 1st. The subnet produces weather forecasts, converts them to renewable energy generation estimates, and feeds those into power trading strategies, real-world revenue from decentralized weather AI. Bitcast on Subnet 93 hit 2,000 hours of watch time in a single day, up 95% month over month. They also closed a second deal with BitGet, a client with over $500 million in valuation. IOTA on Subnet 9 shipped peer-to-peer activation transfer, doubling training speeds. They're now operating across 58 countries. Leadpoet on Subnet 71 was featured in Forbes, $750,000 raised, $1 million in annual recurring revenue, 26 B2B customers. That's a subnet generating real enterprise SaaS revenue. And Score on Subnet 44 launched their first non-football vision element, Detect Person. The subnet is expanding from sports analytics into broader computer vision applications.
Now let's move to this week's Subnet Spotlight. This week's spotlight goes to Templar on Subnet 3, home of the Covenant-72B training run that dominated the conversation all week. Templar is Bittensor's decentralized pre-training subnet. While most subnets focus on inference, running existing models to generate outputs, Templar focuses on the harder problem, actually training new models from scratch. Miners on the subnet contribute compute to a distributed training run, and the incentive mechanism rewards miners based on their contribution to reducing the model's loss function. Better contributions mean more emissions. The key innovation is that this happens permissionlessly. Anyone with sufficient hardware can join the training run. There's no application, no approval, no central coordinator deciding who gets to participate. The protocol manages coordination through its incentive structure. Covenant-72B is a 72 billion parameter language model trained on approximately 1.1 trillion tokens. To put that in perspective, 72 billion parameters puts this model in the same weight class as models from Mistral, Meta's early Llama releases, and other frontier lab outputs. Training on over a trillion tokens means this wasn't a toy demonstration, it's a production-scale training run. What makes this different from any other 72B model is how it was built. No single entity controlled the process. The training was distributed across miners competing on Subnet 3's incentive mechanism. The OpenTensor Foundation called it the largest decentralized permissionless AI pre-training run in history, and no one has disputed that claim. The response from the investment community was immediate. Sami Kassab from Unsupervised Capital said decentralized compute networks are about to go on a generational run. Mark Jeffrey shared the news to his Stillcore audience. Joseph Jacks, founder of OSS Capital, highlighted it. Rob Greer, partner at Stillcore Capital, amplified the announcement. The Yuma team at DCG put their weight behind it. This was a coordinated signal from the people who think most seriously about Bittensor's value proposition.
Templar is currently the 5th largest subnet by market cap at approximately $39 million. Its alpha token price is $8.57, up 16.6% on the week, the best performance among all top 10 subnets. Emissions share sits at 4.1%, making it the 3rd highest emitting subnet, behind Afine at 5.42% and Targon at 4.47%. These numbers matter because they show the market is responding. Capital flowed into Templar after the Covenant announcement, which increased its emissions, which means more TAO going to miners, which means more incentive to contribute compute to future training runs. This is the dTAO flywheel working exactly as designed. The significance of Covenant-72B extends beyond Bittensor. The broader AI industry has operated on the assumption that large-scale pre-training requires massive centralized compute clusters, the kind only Google, Meta, OpenAI, and Anthropic can afford. Covenant-72B demonstrates an alternative path, decentralized, permissionless, incentive-driven pre-training that can produce models at meaningful scale. This doesn't mean Bittensor is about to replace OpenAI's training clusters, but it does mean the design space for AI training just got larger. And for the Bittensor ecosystem specifically, it validates Subnet 3's entire reason for existence and suggests that future training runs at even larger scale are achievable. Sam Altman said this week that he sees intelligence becoming a utility like electricity. Const responded, "Open ownership will win." Covenant-72B is the clearest evidence yet that he might be right.
Now let's talk about where money is flowing. The top 5 subnets by market cap excluding root: Chutes at $89 million, Affine at $42.7 million, Targon at $42.3 million, Templar at $39 million, and Lilium.io at $34.8 million. Templar is the new entrant to the top 5 this week, jumping from 7th to 5th on the strength of the Covenant announcement. On the upside, Beam on Subnet 105 surged 134%, driven by its launch as Yuma's newest accelerated subnet, enterprise bandwidth, and file transfer via proof of bandwidth. Mark Jeffrey compared the founders to Uber founder Travis Kalanick's earlier company Red Swoosh. Soma on Subnet 114 gained 122%. Nova on Subnet 68 was up 18.4%. On the downside, BitStarter on Subnet 91 fell 99%, likely a deregistration event. FlameWire on Subnet 97 dropped 34%. Ridges on Subnet 62 pulled back 25% after last week's Ridgeline launch rally, a classic buy the rumor, sell the news pattern. The alpha staking ratio, now at 27.5%, continues to be the metric that tells you where the ecosystem is headed. When Mark Jeffrey says going from 20% to 70% will be easier than going from 0 to 20%, he's describing the reflexive nature of dTAO. As more TAO flows into subnets, those subnets earn more emissions, which attracts more miners, which improves output quality, which attracts more capital. The flywheel accelerates as it grows. Watch subnets with real revenue. Chutes for Inference, Leadpoet for B2B SaaS, Bitcast for attention economy distribution, and Zeus for energy trading. Revenue-generating subnets have a structural advantage in a market-based emission system because they can justify capital allocation with cash flows, not just speculation. Now for this week's Bittensor 101 segment. Given this week's Covenant-72B news, let's break down what decentralized pre-training actually means and why it's so much harder than decentralized inference. Most people's experience with AI is inference. You type a prompt into ChatGPT and it generates a response. That's a trained model running on a server producing outputs. Inference is relatively easy to decentralize because each request is independent. One miner can handle one query without knowing what another miner is doing. Pre-training is fundamentally different. This is the process of taking a model with random weights and teaching it language, feeding it trillions of tokens of text, and adjusting billions of parameters so the model learns to predict the next word. In a centralized setup, this happens on a cluster of thousands of GPUs, all connected by high-speed networking, all synchronized to update the same model weights simultaneously. The challenge for decentralized pre-training is coordination. How do you get miners who don't know each other, running different hardware in different countries, to contribute meaningfully to a single training run? The answer on Subnet 3 is a technique involving gradient sharing. Miners train locally, share their parameter updates, and the protocol aggregates those updates based on how much they reduce the model's loss. Miners who contribute useful updates earn more emissions. Miners who contribute noise earn less. This is incredibly difficult to get right. The gradient updates need to be verified. Free riders need to be detected. The aggregation has to produce a coherent model, not garbage. The fact that Templar pulled this off at 72 billion parameters and over 1 trillion tokens is why the announcement landed so hard. For Bittensor as a whole, decentralized pre-training is the final frontier. If the network can train frontier-scale models, not just serve them, it closes the loop on the entire AI production pipeline. Training, fine-tuning, and inference, all on decentralized infrastructure. That's the long-term vision, and Covenant-72B just moved it from theoretical to demonstrated. That's it for episode 2 of Bittensor Weekly. If you found this useful, subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss next week's episode. We're tracking everything from subnet performance to protocol milestones to the alpha positions worth watching. Sign up for the companion newsletter, link in the description, for the full data tables, source links, and subnet rankings. I'll see you next Saturday. Stay staked.